War Eagle, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of E2C Network Live, where we get together and we talk about what's going on in the world of Auburn stuff. Obviously, always heavy on the sports here, but we talk about anything and everything that might be orange and blue here on this live stream. So whether you're watching live or on the replay, we do appreciate you stopping by for a little bit of your time, your precious time, and spending it with us to talk about what we love about the Auburn Tigers and the university, the town, the culture at large. So that's what we're going to be discussing here today. On this live stream episode, we always come with one big topic to talk about, but we can get on anything really, and that is we are broadcasting right after the Auburn Tigers basketball season has come to a close, thankfully with a win over the Mississippi State Bulldogs. The Tigers do win, and might I add, it is Bruce Pearl's 600th win in his career. So kind of special to end it that way in a very tumultuous season. We'll talk about all that stuff. I want to hear your perspectives, your comments, your questions, all that good stuff as we go throughout the show. And we could hit on anything Auburn at any point. We might bounce around a lot. So as you're coming in here, we're going to cover a couple of bases here, things that we always cover at the top of the show. We're broadcasting on two different formats here, right here in front. YouTube folks, you guys know how much I love you. I love the social media folks too, but you are the primary stream here. We got Facebook Live streaming with us alongside us, so everybody wave at the Facebook folks virtually. Facebook, you can always come over to YouTube and hang over here with us. It's the better option, but we have two different formats going on at this point. So don't be shy. Post comments, questions, War Eagle, hello, whatever you'd like to, and smash that like button if you do enjoy this content today. So at the top of every show, we cover these bases. As you guys get in here, I do want you to go ahead and give me your shout outs, where you're watching from, what city, what state, what country. Sometimes we get international people. So right now, city, state, country, where you're watching in from, so we can know where the Auburn family is watching. Here are the ways that you can support our channel. Only the YouTube folks can see this. Sorry, Facebook people. But number one, you can listen to the podcast. Number two, you can join the E2C Network Booster Club. You can donate on PayPal, or you can shop at the TeePublic store and get our logo. Should have wore that today so y'all could see that. There's actually a sale going on right now if you'd like to take part of that. So go check all those options out. I have put all of those links in the chat window if you would like to check them out yourself. And it's in the description of the video as well. All right, so Samuel's here. You guys can see, how does it feel? It feels pretty good, I would say. Anytime you get a win, it's obviously makes you feel good about the situation that was this season. I don't know that I would find much super exciting things this season outside of the debut of, well, actually two. I guess, if you really think about it, you could probably find a lot of things here. But how does it feel? I would say right now, things are feeling pretty good in terms of the way you ended the season and what the future might hold. There's a lot of questions that still need to be answered, but there's a lot to look forward to. So what do you all think about the end of the season? What's on your mind? What's on your hearts? I know there's one big question that everybody wants answered. How did Dylan Cardwell make that shot? That's not the question that's on everybody's mind. It is a question. If you saw that shot, that was something. I've seen a lot of craziness happen in my time as an Auburn fan, but I have not seen a interesting shot like that in quite some time, and make it look good too. I've long said that Dylan Cardwell was the Michael Carrera. Some of you will know that name if you've been following, obviously, Auburn basketball, but college basketball, SEC basketball, and for the last couple of years, Michael Carrera was a basketball player for South Carolina, and he is one of those players, when he gets on the court and you see him moving around and the decisions he makes, you're like, how is this dude even playing basketball? How? Like he's not coordinated. And hear me out, I'm not saying that about Dylan, but he gives me those feelings. But somehow Michael Carrera would put the ball in the basket and make it look good and awkward and like it shouldn't happen at the same time. So I kind of get those vibes from Dylan Cardwell. He is, he's done a lot this year that I didn't expect him to do. So I'm very excited for his future as part of the Tigers. But to see him make that shot in that fashion was quite entertaining, wasn't it? It was very, very entertaining. All right. So there. The big question though is, and I know that's on everybody's mind, is Sharife Cooper. Is he going to stay? Is he going to go? All that good stuff. Now, I would caution everybody here to remember that things that are posted on social media aren't necessarily true. Actually, I'd say most of the stuff that you see on social media is not true. But in terms of when you see recruits, players, and anybody like that posting cryptic things, people want to read into them. And I usually operate off of the idea that where there is smoke, there is fire. But to what degree is the part that I add on to that. So that's why I don't get up in arms when I see a post before the game where Sharife Cooper, apparently I think on Instagram, posted a shot of the scoreboard and had like a little teardrop thing. It could mean two things. It could mean it's his last game in Auburn, and that's why he's doing that. It could mean his last game in Auburn for this season, just like every other player. So I wouldn't get too worried right now about those, about that meaning too much. But I understand the ferocity with which we want to know what's going on with the Sharife Cooper situation. So I know that's the true big question, not how did Dylan Cardwell make the shot. But what do you all think? Do you think Sharife Cooper's staying? Do you think that he is going to actually move on to the NBA this year? I've long said that he's got a very unique situation that I think that he could probably benefit a little bit from staying, but I wouldn't blame him for going. He's really on that 50-50 there. Like, whereas Isaac Okoro, he needed to go. There were some things he could have worked on, but he needed to go and maximize his potential right now. Sharife's got some other connections and he's going to end up in the NBA regardless. So I don't know that it's best for him to, I don't know. I guess I go back and forth on it. But if you guys have an opinion on that, please do let me know what you think about that. All right, so the basketball season is over with. It was a very tumultuous season. So when we get on the podcast later today, probably, with Gray Oldenburg, my co-host, we'll be talking, obviously, about this game, wrapping that up. And I'm sure we'll kind of, speculate a little bit about that. But we do that wrap-up of the season a little bit later after maybe, everything's wrapped up with college basketball in general. Because there are implications for Auburn basketball outside of what they do, obviously what happens within the conference, but in the bigger picture at large. So we usually wait for March Madness. But what you probably can expect is we'll probably do an SEC basketball tournament preview, even maybe a review as well, and talk about that and, whatever Auburn news comes in between. And after that takes place, after the season as for everybody is over with, after we do we're going to do a March Madness preview show and have a contest again this year if you want to be part of that. We're also, obviously, we'll wrap up the season when everything is over with in there. And so hopefully by that time we'll have a lot of those questions. And the one big question that everybody's wanting to know is, will Sharife Cooper be here? We'll hopefully have an answer by that time. I wouldn't get your hopes up because I have a feeling this might be one of those things that drags out for quite some time. So we'll see. That's kind of my take on that in terms of that. So high points, low points of the season. If you have some, please share them. And I want to see what's on y'all's minds today in terms of wrapping up the Auburn basketball season. If you remember, we were all hyped about this with knowing Sharife Cooper was going to be here. There were rumors about the eligibility issues as well. But I think everybody was thinking that, especially after being out for a year and being negated from participating with COVID-19 last year, there were a lot of people that were excited of what potentially could happen for the team this year. And when that came down the line with the dismissal of the season, or the dismissal of postseason for us, that was very, very, very disappointing. Casey's here. Good to see you, Casey. Says starting five next winter: point guard Sharife Cooper, shooting guard Justin Powell, small forward Alan Flanagan, power forward JT Thor, and center Jabari Smith. So I think you're being a little bit funny because Jabari is nowhere near a center. And here's the other thing too, is that Auburn doesn't really run a traditional center. Now last season and seasons prior, they kind of did with Austin Wiley, because that's what he was. But what you saw this season, Auburn likes to run with 2 power forwards as opposed to a true center in the type of offense they run. They need guys that can get down the floor fast, and when you play with a traditional center, that can be a little bit detrimental to their style of play. But in terms of, the big question, if Sharife Cooper is going to be here, yeah, he's the starting point guard next year, no doubt. Shooting guard Justin Powell, potentially, I would actually, in that scenario, slide Jabari Smith into shooting guard potential there, or even Allen Flanagan and then small forward Jabari Smith. I do think JT Thor would be a starter, and I do think that Jalen Williams would be a starter as well. And this is not like a shot at Justin Powell at all. It's just the fact that I think that's the best lineup that gives us the best chance for success, with Justin Powell almost being the 6th man. The 6th man is such an honored role too, so you really have to. I think a lot of people think when someone doesn't start, that's kind of like almost, well, they're not good enough to start. Not necessarily. Sometimes you're better suited to come off the team, not just because of what you are as a player, but what you do for the team. And I think Justin, his best role for the team is coming off of the bench as that 6th man alongside like a Devin Cambridge. And here's the thing, too, that people are forgetting. Auburn could run if Sharife Cooper comes back, Auburn has a chance to run what Kentucky did a couple seasons ago with a big platoon system. Excuse me. War Productions in the house. If Cooper stays, it's over. We will be experienced and have some really good new guys. It's a big if, though. A lot of people are worried about that. Over for the SEC. I knew what you meant by that. It's not over for us, but it's over for the SEC. Well, someone has to play center. It doesn't matter if it's a real center. No, I mean, not necessarily, Casey. There's, like I said, Auburn doesn't run a center, so someone doesn't have to play center. It's a position that is not utilized heavily in Auburn system unless you have like an Austin Wiley type. By the way, I see we got a lot of people watching on Facebook. Don't be shy. Post questions and comments, and we'll address them as they come up if I can keep up with them. But I always invite you guys to come on over here to YouTube if you want to be a part of that. It's the more interactive stream over here. Justin Powell is going to be a lottery pick in 2022, potentially, yes. I think there's a lot of players when you think at that have potential to be lottery. So let's just assume right now what we know. Sharife Cooper's still here, and that's all we can operate off of as of this point. So you've got Sharife Cooper, potentially Allen Flanagan, potentially JT Thor, potentially Jabari Smith, potentially Justin Powell. And, you're negating people like, a Jalen Williams really stepping it up a notch and becoming just even more of a force than he is. And I think that that's a potential as well. I know at this point of the season with no postseason, nothing really to look forward to in terms of what everybody else is competing in, the mindset shifts from what's happened this season already to next season. But there's still a lot left to figure out from this season. War Productions, Auburn baseball has been it's I wouldn't categorize it as disappointing. Just did not anticipate the struggles early as you would have here. Here's the thing too, is they were supposed to be playing Xavier this week, and I forget what happened with that series and why we brought in number 18, Boston College. It's quite a bit of an upgrade. So, that's not playing in their favor either at this point. Again, so what are you going to remember most about this season? Things that stuck, good things, bad things that stuck out to you? What defines the season for you? Who's the players that stuck out to you most, good or bad? Any of that stuff I want to hear from you guys tonight. When you think back to when the thing was canceled postseason, there was so much disappointment, especially with Sharife Cooper being here and being the point guard. You almost made you forget that there were the eligibility issues at the time. So, it was such a disappointing thing at the very beginning of the season to start off with, but there was still I think there was a lot of hope that maybe it might get overturned. And then with the Sharife Cooper thing becoming a reality that he was not going to be eligible, that kind of made it even more of a damper. And with the restrictions and all that stuff, it wasn't the most fun start to a college basketball season for Auburn fans. Casey says we could lose 6 players next year. That's why the 2022 class is a focus for the future. It absolutely, every recruiting class is a focus for the future. But yes, this, Auburn has the potential to lose everything in a good way next year, if they don't already lose some of the pieces this season. How about that? Is there anybody else that you think will not be part of this team next year in terms of draft, in terms of moving on transfers? It's going to get pretty crowded on the roster, which is why I've said we need to move to a platoon system. So there's a lot of potential that there could be some changes going in next year. We brought in Boston College because we are Auburn. Fair point, I guess. Alabama's best team in almost 2 decades isn't even better than the last 3 Auburn teams, not including this year. So, that's interesting that you brought that up, War Productions. And, I know we're mainly talking about Auburn season here, but let's discuss that. There are a lot of people that are treating this Alabama team as the darlings of the SEC. And I'm not denying that they're not one of the best teams in the SEC, but this is a year in the SEC where it's down pretty much. And the way I've seen Alabama play against other teams, against us, and against some of the other elite teams, I'm not impressed whatsoever. I think they will probably go far semifinals at least, probably in the SEC tournament because they only have to play 3 games to win it. So I think that they will make the semifinals at the bare minimum. But I could not go past that. I think they'll probably make it to the Sweet 16 in the NCAA tournament because of the way they'll be seeded. But yeah, they're not there. Arkansas is the best team in the SEC, talent-wise. I remember we played them, I think, first game of SEC conference play, and I was like, wow, that's a good team right there, and that's going to be the team to beat for the SEC this year. Now, it didn't shake out that way completely, but you could argue in a sense that it did. So, yes, I do think that Alabama's team is good, but it is not that good. And someone took issue with that in when we post the podcast here on YouTube of us, and I even pointed it out. It's so funny. Like, you can give all the prefaces you want for saying something that could be controversial, and still people get upset. And I couldn't tell if it was an Alabama fan, I think it was, or if it was an Auburn fan just taking issue with what I said. It's like, I'm not trying to play sour grapes here because they just beat us, but they're not the best team in the SEC. They're not. They're barely top 25, if that. They are overrated and bust. I don't know that they're over. It's overrated's a little bit strong for me, but she says Alabama will lose in the first round of the NCAA tournament. I mean, we'd all love that, right? I just don't foresee that happening. They'll make some noise a little bit. Everyone will be back. A transfer point guard to back up Sharife because I don't trust Allen running point guard, so 14 players on the roster next year. Yeah, it's a full squad, and you've already got, I think Lord Behrman is a scholarship player now, so I would anticipate potentially a couple of transfers out, if not at least one, if not more. I hate to speculate on who those might be, but I think you can probably look in terms of playing time and see who some of those players might be. And I don't want to lose any because I think every player this season has had some shining moments, and I think that they deserve to be a part of this team. But, for the sake of their careers, their opportunities, it might be best that with the talent coming in, they go do something else. But finding a point guard, so the point guard option, or the point guard situation, is obviously determined upon Sharife Cooper. If he stays, we should be pretty set. Justin Powell will be back. He's pretty good as a point guard, and I wouldn't even call him a backup point. He's more of a hybrid guard. Jamal Johnson has proven that he can be a very competent backup as well for point guard situations, but I do think you need to bring in not a elite transfer in terms of a point guard, but someone who can just be a solid backup in there in case something were to happen to a potential Sharife return or some of the other point guards, which can happen very closely. So I would say a transfer in is likely, and we'll see what happens. That Sharife Cooper situation has got to get figured out. They are the top 10 with 1 win versus the top 25 team. Yeah, exactly. And that's the frustrating thing about this is, there's been years where Auburn, and I think it was the 2 years before that, the fact that, they had so many wins, quality wins, and they still weren't getting the respect that they deserve. But yeah, Alabama can just do, nothing basically and get the respect. It kind of shows you, and I know I got my orange and blue glasses on, the bias that they have it, in sports they have for Alabama. They should be like 17. I think 17 would be a very fair assessment of where they would be ranked in reality. But yeah. So Casey, do remember that, you want to be, I'm not going to be addressing comments where you're being a little bit more rude towards players. So just remember that if you want your comments addressed, don't be so rude towards certain players that you don't think are as good. But in terms of Preston Cook, yes, he is a scholarship player, and I think that that's going to play some interesting things with numbers as well. So I just got an update on my phone. I can't see it because we've got Facebook people here, but there was something about there was a chant going as the players were leaving the court of one more year for Sharife Cooper, and it seems like maybe he acknowledged it. So read into that what you may. I don't know in what way he acknowledged it. I mean, what do you do in that situation if you're Sharife Cooper? Do you just kind of like, or do you just, I think all you can do is like thumbs up, smile, all that kind of stuff. I get the feeling, though, that this is going to be a long, drawn-out process and conversations that he's going to be having with Coach Pearl, and we're probably not going to know anything till after the postseason is over with. 78S, what's up, man? War Eagle. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. By the way, if y'all are enjoying the content today, please make sure you smash that like button. It does help us help other Auburn fans find us out there if you want to. How about this? Does anybody know of any transfer point guards that be a potential here? Because I know we can obviously go out and recruit a point guard from the recruiting pool, but I do agree with Casey's assessment that a transfer point guard is probably likely. I just wouldn't expect it to be like one of the best transfers out there. It's just somebody that can come in and be a service to the team in terms of who might be on the team next year or not with Sharife Cooper. So I was talking about high points and low points in the season. I think, you're not going to probably see it this way. This is kind of a skewed way of thinking of it. But what I will always remember from this is that we played number 1 and number 2 in the same season. That would be in Gonzaga. And then Baylor. It was... it was fun to see us go up against such great competition. I would have loved for us to put up a little bit more of a fight against them. Gonzaga, that pretty much was over from the start. There were some moments in the Baylor game where Auburn had an opportunity and then Baylor just busted it wide open. So I'll always remember that Auburn played the top competition this season and they went to UCF, and it's kind of serendipitous now with everything that's going on with UCF and Auburn connections and stuff, football at least. But they did take a loss unexpectedly to UCF, and I think that's where some Auburn fans started expressing some frustrations and wondering what's going on. And that was the culmination of, the postseason ban, Sharife Cooper being out, the team looking a little bit out of sorts and trying to figure things out. And that was probably one of the lower points. But as the rest of the postseason started going on, you saw them start to figure it out. Justin Powell started emerging as a star, and things got a little bit better. I'm making my list, but they haven't transferred yet. Gotcha. Alabama struggling with UGA. I mean, I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked for two reasons, just because of everything we said about Alabama. But Georgia actually has gone on a little bit stronger in the second half of conference play. So from that fact alone, I am not shocked because they took us down, avoided the sweep from us this season. So, not shocked there at all. It's funny how in one of the worst SEC basketball years in a while, they win the SEC Big 12 Challenge. I mean, what does that say, too? Like, that's the crazy thing. I think about it this way, War Productions. In a year where the SEC is considered down, the lower half of the SEC kind of rose up a little bit. Not a lot, but enough to be more competitive. So whereas the SEC is not as strong overall, on average, I would say they were a little bit up, because think about all the teams right now that are capable of knocking off a top-tier team. Auburn's in that category because they've done it. Alabama, you got LSU, Florida, Kentucky can still do it, even though they were terrible this year. You've got Mississippi State can do it. Arkansas can do it. Ole Miss has an opportunity to do it.
there's all those teams, right? Tennessee and Missouri. So really, you take out Vanderbilt. I'm trying to remember everybody else that's in this league. South Carolina, and I feel like I'm forgetting somebody very big too. Who am I forgetting? Georgia, maybe. I put Georgia and Ole Miss kind of like in the maybe category, but that's what I'm saying. That is, the SEC Big Challenge was more of an opportunity for the SEC to win overall because the competition was more even across the board. There wasn't just a top heavy with like Auburn, Kentucky, Tennessee, and then everybody else. It was more even across the board. So we'll see what happens in the next season, see if it carries over. But it was nice to get the SEC win, right? I'm not a big SEC guy, but I will for the SEC Big 12 Challenge, unless Alabama wins. To be fair, Kentucky and Texas game got canceled, and Texas would have whipped. Yes, they would have. Especially with Greg Brown. Remember, Greg Brown was the center that was potentially coming to Auburn. So, Casey, there's your center that almost came here to play with us this season. We would have been really running out of the room at that point. Weird thing to ever say about Kentucky basketball. Yeah, it's a weird season. Can I just ask for college basketball? Whatever weird you have left, let's get it all out this season. This is the season to do it. If somebody just random's going to win the whole thing, hopefully not Alabama, this is the year to get it out of our systems. Let's do it. Any weird rule changes, just get it all out, and let's start fresh in November of 2021 with back to the basics where everybody who is competitive or everybody who is usually pretty good should be competitive. So, yes. So there could have been an opportunity there for the Big 12 to take it. But there were some great games this year and great matchups, which I think is what I really liked about the Big 12 SC Challenge. So always happy to see that. Some of the disappointments for me is there was not a game with UAB. I love that and want that to be a rivalry on a more consistent basis. I love that Coach Pearl continues to schedule in-state teams and play them. So this year it was Troy. It was Troy, and I think there was one other I'm missing. Went to South Alabama last year, on and on and on. But yeah. So then just kind of thinking through some of the highlights of the season for me. 16 seed Natty season, you already know it. Well, we've already gotten the 16 knocking off the 1 before that, but this would have been the year if it hadn't happened to do it. By the way, heads up, if y'all haven't heard already, we're going to be doing our March Madness Challenge again for a prize. Prize will be a little bit different this year, but it'll still be fun. And we had, I think, almost 300 people compete last time we did this. Not last season because it didn't happen, but the season before. So it should be a lot of fun. So I hope all of y'all will participate as well when we announce that. Greg Brown wants to play small forward, not center. He likes to play outside. He does that, but that's kind of where he gets utilized traditionally because of his size. And he probably would have fit the mold more for a center here at Auburn, or closer to a Jalen Williams. So Jalen Williams is he's a power forward, but he's not tall enough to almost be a center. But he kind of, to me, he almost has those Austin Wiley type of moves and situational plays and things like that. If Jalen was just a little bit taller, he could almost be an Austin Wiley. So we talked a lot about Sharife Cooper. We talked about Justin Powell. I'm excited for his season. Glad to see that he's actually, back out in the court somewhat in terms of sitting out there on the sideline, being able to take noise and sound and all that stuff. And so I would anticipate, barring further complications with his health, that after a year he will be back on the side. He will be playing again and be doing the things that we got used to Justin Powell doing. I think Alan Flanagan showed that he's ready to be an offensive leader this year, and we can probably anticipate a lot of that. The good thing is you're going to have a lot of players that can do some good things, especially if Sharife comes back. It's going to be hard for other teams to guard Auburn. As long as Alabama doesn't make the Final Four, I am happy. Well, look, this is a weird season, so you might as well just go ahead and... my philosophy is this: prepare for the worst so you'll be ecstatic when it doesn't happen. That's the way I like to approach this personally. But yes, I hope that as well. There's so many crazy things that have happened this year. I don't know that's not out of the realm of possibility as well. The only thing that I would say that's, going to keep Alabama from doing stuff like that. I haven't even, we don't know where they're going to fit in the bracket. If they fall into a bracket with a Baylor or a Gonzaga, based on what we've seen, they will not get past the Final Four. It will not. Or past the Elite Eight. I'm predicting a Sweet 16 finish for them, barring when I see the bracket actually finish there. But yeah. By the way, I said at the beginning of the show, this is 600 wins for Coach Bruce Pearl. So he got his 500th and his 600th here at Auburn. So it's kind of special to know that we've been racking up those win totals for him. That's a elite group that he's moved into and shows what a great coach he is overall. So it was a big day. So in all, with this season, when you kind of wrap a bow on it and say we've acknowledged the craziness, the frustrations, the terrible things that have happened, the way it ended with a win, with Coach Bruce Pearl's 600 win, and the fight that I think that the team showed. I think there were only a handful, and I don't even a handful, maybe like 2 or 3 games this season where Auburn maybe kind of quit a little bit, and I wouldn't even say quit. I think they showed that they could really fight through some of the adversity this year, and I was very impressed with that. Casey says, imagine the lineup that almost happened. Sharife Cooper, Jalen Green, Brandon Boston. No, I don't know that Brandon Boston was a real reality, but I guess potentially. Jonathan Kuminga was a potential, and Greg Brown. Think about that. Just think about that. Would have been outstanding. So Jonathan, I think, moved on to the G League. Greg went to Texas. Jalen went to the G League. Boston went to Kentucky. And then Sharife Cooper obviously chose us here. So, all in all, this season is not one that we will obviously look back on as some of the greatest moments in Auburn history. But I think it is one where the Auburn Spirit maintained and fought through some very hard times and showed some pretty significant resilience. And so I'm very happy about that overall. All right, we're going to say goodbye to the social media folks. We had a lot of people pop in over there. Everybody wave goodbye to them. We'll see y'all later. YouTube folks, you know the drill. This is the part of the show. We bounce around a lot. Final questions, comments, derogatory rebuttal that you might have. Anything's fair game, anything Auburn or anything in general. So go ahead and post that now in the comments if you'd like for me to address it. All right. Just a quick reminder, as always, these are the ways you can help support the channel. Listen to the podcast, join the Booster Club, offer a PayPal donation, or buy our gear over at TeePublic. Our logo is over there. You'll definitely want to go check that out. It's a great shirt, great looking logo, if I do say so myself. So there's a sale going on over there if you want to take advantage of that. All the links, very top of the chat window and in the description below. So don't miss out on some of those opportunities. Pretty gets you some gear and help support some of the stuff that we do here. And we're very appreciative to some of our Booster Club members. I think we had a few of them pop in very quickly and weren't able to stay. But as always, I want to thank them for signing up for as little as $1 a month. And I can honestly tell you that I get excited about seeing $1 a month because it's one less dollar of the expenses for running a podcast network and website and all that stuff that is covered. So thank y'all so much for the efforts you put forward to help support here. And just you guys here too, even if you're not part of that, just being here watching these videos, liking the video if you haven't done that already, and all that good stuff in between. So obviously we're not done talking with basketball. Auburn basketball is, a big thing now, as it should have always been. And so there will be plenty of opportunities to talk more and more about this in the future. Casey, I bet if Jalen Green would have came, Greg would have come, and Kuminga and Boston was a big shot, but decided to go lose to Kentucky instead of playing with his buddy. I would have said Boston would have never come regardless. Kuminga maybe. I was really hopeful for Greg Brown, and I think you're right, Casey, that had a couple of those chips fallen, could have been a really big year for Auburn recruiting. I think that Jalen Green thing could have been the domino that set everything in motion, but it didn't. But still, we got some great moments out of this. Sharife Cooper was everything we expected him to be and more. Justin Powell was probably the biggest surprise. Alan Flanagan rose to his potential that we anticipated for him. I think every player this season had some shiny moments, all the way down to people who saw less time, like Javon Franklin, Babatunde Akingbola, Chris Moore. There were always times this year on the podcast especially that we talked about them and the things that they were doing. There were some frustrating things and reasons we talked about why they may not have seen some of that playing time that they probably wanted. But we saw some moments I think we'll always be fond of. So, like I said, not the end of basketball talk for us here, but there'll be plenty more to talk about in the future. So I think that's all for today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Smash that like button on the way out, and we'll be back again talking very soon on another live stream. War Eagle.